You don't have to do the whole welcome to the pod thing.
Welcome to the pod.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Athletes Do What podcast. We are your hosts, Nick
and Ethan.
Most people hear stories of athletes that do work around their communities, simply take pictures with fans. But what about those hobbies that go unseen for the most part?
Today we dive into the world of ayahuasca and how it revitalized the career of controversial NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers.
Well, welcome. How are we doing today?
What's going on?
Yes, dude. I mean, this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
I
like talking about ayahuasca. It's very interesting.
Fitting that we're doing this podcast on April 20th.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as National Weed Day 420.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Ethan.
Yo.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Let's go into it. What is it?
All right. So, ayahuasca, it's basically what it boils down to is you like that boils down. It's a tea. It's a plant-based psychedelic. You drink it, and the active ingredient is dimethyltryptamine or DMT. Normally you can't drink DMT. Your stomach cannot process it. So in a regular sense, if you were to use DMT recreationally, which is illegal in the United States, if you were to use it recreationally, you would be smoking DMT through some sort of smoking apparatus. However, in South America, in the time of the ancients, let me back up. In South America, in places such as Peru, Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador, the ancients discovered a way of mixing the active ingredient DMT, which is in the ayahuasca plant, the leaves that they use to make the tea, with a vine that contains a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which allows your stomach to process the DMT and induce vision.
Going right into the bloodstream. People who have done this say this stuff is the most intense way to indulge in DMT.
Yeah.
It is you ingest it, it is straight in the bloodstream.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done it, but I would imagine so. It's like you're basically injecting it into your veins, but slightly slower.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what's happening.
From podcasts I've seen, it's like they will they drink it and they're laying on a mat for hours while the shaman is doing his rituals. It's wild. It's crazy.
What's interesting about it too is that the body actually rejects the substance. Your body doesn't like it. Like you throw up, you have intense diarrhea while it's happening, an insane amount of nausea, but the upside of that is that you, from stories I've heard, what happens is you basically travel to another dimension.
And most drugs, I would imagine.
Well, yes, and yes. It's interesting. Like a lot of drugs you hear about, people say oh yeah, I was in another dimension, dude. This legitimately may take you to another dimension. What's interesting about it is that your brain actually actively produces DMT in your sleep.
This is where people say their dreams come from.
Yes, some people believe that dreams come from DMT. That's not confirmed by scientific studies.
Allegedly,
I don't know.
Allegedly. gotta protect our backs.
Allegedly produce dreams. But when taken in higher dosages, either through smoking or drinking, like through ayahuasca, you are basically put into a dream state. The ancients believe that through imbibing this tea, they were able to speak to their ancestors.
I've even heard talk to God. They feel like they would become almost like they were God.
Yeah.
It was very, very interesting stories come out of the ayahuasca experience.
Ayahuasca actually roughly translates to vine of the dead. One thing that is very common among people that use DMT or ayahuasca, or use the substance, is an overwhelming sense of meeting entities, which is why you get the ancients talking about how they were talking to their ancestors. Maybe these entities that they were interacting with were in the image of some of their ancestors. Some people talk about experiencing talking to God. Some people talk about talking to gods, quote unquote, like Greek gods, perhaps, or Roman gods, same thing. Maybe northern gods, the Norse. It's possible. But the one thing that is consistent is that there's an overwhelming sense of entities that you are meeting. Now there's a King's College, I believe, study in London that they are doing, where they have actually gotten permission from the UK government to experiment with DMT, and scientifically study its effects. And what they've been able to do is that they have gotten volunteers, and they are directly injecting DMT into the bloodstream intravenously, and can effectively keep the individual in the dream state for about an hour, which is almost unheard of. Usually, a DMT experience, I'm not sure about ayahuasca, but a normal DMT experience is usually about 15 minutes, and it feels like a lifetime.
Oh, the ayahuasca, like the experiences.
Yeah.
I watched a documentary made by podcaster Aubrey Marcus, who is a very big. He loves this stuff. He is a very big. Topic. Yeah, he's very big into like the self-love, finding yourself through plant medicine, all stuff like that, natural stuff.
He's a big supporter of plant medicine and psychedelics.
He's a part of the program. All right, like he's into this.
Yeah,
and his experience, it was like a weekend, and every night they would go out to the shack, where the shaman would perform the ritual, and it would take hours depending on the dose. Like if they did like a half of a cup of the tea, he'd be there for 2 hours, but he did a whole cup on the last night, and it took 4-5 hours for the effects to completely wear off. So it all depends on like the dose of it. But really, like but really the point of this whole thing is to show you, the listener, I'm gonna go in.
What's going on?
I'm gonna talk about Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. Wait, what just happened there?
I don't know, because
where were you going?
Are we good?
Where are you going with that?
Are we good?
I don't know. Okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This also could cut out.
Fuck, where were we at, dude?
I don't know, that just so totally fucked.
I'm sorry.
You're good.
Right. With
talking
King's
about
College, entities, Aubrey
time
Marcus.
Rings, the time of ayahuasca. I was talking about Aubrey Marcus.
Yes.
All right, cut. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so
and we're back.
We're back. Yeah. I was talking about how in the King's College study, they're keeping people under for over an hour. I'd imagine with ayahuasca, and you were speaking about Aubrey Marcus and his experiences, that because it's going through the stomach, it definitely would take a lot longer, just because your stomach, the acids have to break down everything and stuff like that, which is where the monoamine oxidase inhibitor comes in.
Big word.
Yeah, allows your stomach to not break it down, which it normally would, which is why if you ate the ayahuasca leaf, you wouldn't experience the DMT, like the psychedelic effects of the DMT in the plant. Yeah, at King's College, they're keeping people for like under in the experience for an hour. And what's happening is these people reportedly are coming back from the experience, and oftentimes in a blind interview, like what do you call that? A debriefing.
Okay.
Yeah. In a blind debriefing afterwards, they would report having very similar experiences to other people that were in the study. Completely like without speaking to each other and things of that nature. So what they're realizing is that, or their kind of theory as to why this is happening is that it's possible that using DMT is actually literally taking their mind to another dimension that is a real place, and that these people are all going to this same place and having very similar experiences. And so it's been widely publicized that this study is actually, quote unquote, mapping the DMT realm.
That's pretty interesting. On the topic of mapping the DMT realm, there is someone very controversial who, during COVID and most recently during the summer of 2021, this man, you may know him, Aaron Charles Rodgers. He is the Green Bay Packers quarterback, going to be the Jets quarterback very soon, I would assume. But as of now, he is a franchise quarterback in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers is not somebody, well, let me take that back. He is someone now that you would think would do something like this. But prior to this, you wouldn't have thought athletes...
Prior to 2020.
Yeah, prior to 2020 and this entire experience that he's been on, you would not expect athletes to be so open about such topics.
Especially when it's illegal in the United States.
Exactly. It is an illegal substance, ayahuasca, in the United States. And Aaron Rodgers, who is a former Super Bowl MVP, regular season MVP, he is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And on the Pat McAfee Show, one of the largest sports podcasts.
Sports shows.
Yeah, on the planet. He went out there for about an hour and a half one day and just broke the news to the world that Aaron Rodgers went to Peru in 2020 during the heart of COVID.
Met with a shaman. Sat down for a weekend or so and met his maker, basically. Pretty much.
He went on to talk about how, ayahuasca helped him have this thing, quote unquote, called ego death, where during the trip, he saw him. It was like almost imagine yourself laying down and your soul, spirit, everything you experience is lifted out of your body and you're looking at yourself from a top-down perspective. This is what Aaron describes as some of the trip that he experienced, where he's seeing himself in this situation with like a guide helping him learn who his true self is.
I believe that would be, you could roughly translate that to a sort of perspective.
Yeah.
On your life, like a self-reflective, sort of perspective that you wouldn't normally have.
This is very interesting. On a football level, if we take time to go back and look at Aaron Rodgers prior to this experience, he was what most people would say an aging quarterback. He just turned.
He was still good, dude. Man.
I mean, yeah, it's still Aaron Rodgers. It's still in there somewhere. But he just turned 40 this past December. So before that, he was like 38, 39 when he was really getting involved in this. But, and that's kind of old for quarterbacks. I mean, Brady's an exception because he's, ancient. But most quarterbacks stop playing around their late 30s. And Rodgers, his stats were on the decline. Like prior to doing ayahuasca. Now, I'm not going to say that ayahuasca is the only reason why he turned into one of the best quarterbacks of all time, because he was good prior. But leading up to it,
he was definitely already one of the best quarterbacks of all time prior to doing ayahuasca.
Yes. So let me just get that out of the way. Aaron Rodgers was a Hall of Famer prior to ayahuasca. Yeah. But if you look at the stats leading up to the ayahuasca trip, we'll take the first 3 years before the ayahuasca trip, 2019, 2018, and 2017. His numbers compared to the rest of his career were significantly worse than what he's used to.
Yeah, that drop off after 2016. That's huge.
In 2016, okay, so preface. In 2017, he was injured. He got hurt after like week 5.
Yeah.
But in 2018 and 2019, he had his 2 lowest completion percentage years of his career, 2 lowest touchdown numbers of his career as a starter. The interceptions were low, but Rodgers is always low on interceptions. Passer ratings was around league average, but the thing about this is if you look at the years right after he took ayahuasca, in 2020, the following season after his first trip to Peru, Rodgers had his highest completion percentage, threw for 4,200 yards, almost 4,300 yards, 1 yard away, had 48 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. For someone that doesn't know what those numbers mean, throwing 48 touchdowns is like winning Employee of the Month 11 times out of the year, 11 months out of the year, and having 5 interceptions is like 1 month you had an off year. That would be an off year? My bad.
Off month.
Off month.
Yeah.
So these numbers are insane.
That's unheard of.
It is unheard of unless you're Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
He won MVP in 2020 of the National Football League, and then backed it up by the following year in 2021, doing roughly the same number, touchdown to interception, while also winning MVP again. Now, I'm not out here saying that if every single one of us listening go to Peru and take ayahuasca, we're going to come back the best version of ourselves. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that.
Actually, take umbrage with that. You were telling me about that earlier. I'm not so sure
that it's solely the ayahuasca that made Aaron Rodgers.
That's a better way to put it.
I don't think I'm not saying ayahuasca is the reason for Aaron Rodgers' recent success over the last couple years, but I am saying that I think that for him, being able to come out and talk about this openly on a show and being able to truly show the world who Aaron Rodgers is has helped open him up to himself and be able to express that on the football field. And that's what I think happened in 2020 and 2021. He wasn't worried about the media, about, drama, his family, and, he wasn't worried about anything. Yeah. He was just worried about being Aaron Rodgers. And when that happened, we could clearly see from the stats that Aaron Rodgers outperformed even himself in this case.
I mean, this is speculation, of course, but despite the world burning down
during COVID,
apart from Florida,
free Florida, baby.
Yeah. Apart from Florida, despite the world burning down, Aaron Rodgers played his best season of football ever. Yeah. And whether that's down to the ayahuasca, whether that's down to whatever, something that he did that year changed something.
Yes.
Yeah. Because if you look at 2019 to 2020, in 2019, 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's great. That's pretty good. 2020, 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. That's ridiculous.
It's just bonkers numbers.
He almost doubled his numbers.
Literally.
Yeah. If he'd have had 4 more touchdowns, he would have doubled his number.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
So attribute that to what you want. Ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Finding himself. Attribute it to what you want.
The Rodgers haters out there, you could argue that maybe the players on the other side of the field weren't playing so well because of the circumstances of what was going on, and Rodgers had the upper hand because he had just gone and found himself or whatever. If that, if you want to come out and say that, that's fine. You can have that opinion, but whatever happened, something contributed to this meteoric rise.
Yes. Now, the really interesting part about this, the whole situation with ayahuasca,
back-to-back, undisputed, COVID, MVP,
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
It's just...
You should put that clip in.
Oh, it's going in there. This isn't getting cut out.
No, the Pat.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But
that's why I said that.
This is really interesting because, when Rodgers came out about this, it opened the door for athletes across the world and across different sports to really come out and share their experiences with ayahuasca. And that with not, I wouldn't say ayahuasca, with other psychedelic drugs as means to help find themselves.
What he did effectively was destigmatize the notion of using alternative medicines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really interesting, however. There's there's articles out there. One's by Sports Illustrated that talks about Kenny Stills. He's a free agent wide receiver. I believe he's still a free agent wide receiver now.
I mean, there is precedence for this type of
experience.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see, like, once Aaron opened the door for other athletes to be open about this, how many people started to break down that barrier between psychedelic drugs and the media's misconception of them.
I would even go as far to say the public's misconception.
Yeah, which could be stemmed from the media, but still, yes, the public's misconception of psychedelics. I feel personally that Aaron Rodgers did a great deed in coming out and talking about this openly, because this hobby of his opened the door for other people who deal with mental illness, mental, struggles, just anything that you could think of. Help them find a way, or maybe, just help better themselves. And Aaron Rodgers is a big contributor to that movement, I believe. But like Kenny Stills, he didn't even use ayahuasca. Kenny Stills was on ketamine, which I'm not too big into what ketamine is. I don't know if Ethan is very keen on what ketamine is, but what exactly, do you know what that is? I mean, I'm not entirely sure.
I'm aware of what it is. I will say I have not done any of the drugs that we have spoken about today.
Everything that we know about these drugs is from other people's
secondhand experiences. But from what I have heard about ketamine is originally it was used for to be a horse tranquilizer.
Wow. So Aaron Rodgers might be onto something, because wasn't he using horse medicine for COVID? I think he might have been.
Is that what he was doing?
We might be going off the rails here. We're going
into that tangent.
But
yeah, Kenny Stills was using horse tranquilizer. I mean, what happened was, what I believe happened was, and this is, I haven't read articles about this. I just know this from seeing people talk about it or whatever, like on podcasts and stuff like that. What happened was that like ketamine was basically being abused by people because of its widespread availability. It wasn't illegal because it was, again, a horse tranquilizer. You could buy it commercially. If, for example, you had horses and you needed to use tranquilizer on them, you could just go out and buy ketamine. Yeah. And then people realize, like, oh, we can use this and have a good time.
Yeah.
But since that's happened, I think ketamine is now a controlled substance. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's been changed now. But when this was happening, when Kenny Stills was taking ketamine in 2016, I don't think it had been Schedule 1 yet.
No.
And so he was able to use it for medicinal purposes. In fact, I think at this point in time, there are licensed offices, medical practices that use ketamine for medicinal purposes, treating depression, treating anxiety, and that kind of thing. And it's all sort of controlled. You're in a controlled environment. There's a licensed psychiatrist there. There's a licensed doctor there in case anything goes wrong. And they, it's kind of like an aided psychiatric experience. Like instead of just going to a therapist and talking about it, you are going to a therapist, talking about it, but also experiencing ketamine.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Now, the really interesting part about both like Aaron Rodgers and Kenny Stills is this is an off-season thing.
Yeah.
This isn't something they're doing mid-game.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next point.
Yeah.
Now, we've been talking about, ayahuasca and I guess benefits that it had on Aaron Rodgers and Kenny Stills. I mean, Kenny Stills wasn't doing ayahuasca, but the psychedelic experiences and what they were having benefits on.
Also, to make it clear, Kenny Stills was experiencing depression. That's why he
did this.
Yeah, moved on to using ketamine, because he had tried all of the traditional methods of treating depression,
therapy, Western medicine, stuff like that.
Yeah, regular quote unquote drugs, going to therapy. None of it was working for him. He became desperate, was looking for a new solution.
Turned to plant medicine.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing that's really interesting, like I was saying, these are all things you do in the off season. You can't perform under these circumstances. Or can you?
Yeah.
Or can you?
Unless you are a specimen.
Unless your name is Doc Ellis and you played for the Pittsburgh Pirates
in 1977.
In 1977. This man, Doc Ellis, he threw what is called a no-hitter. And for those non-baseball nerds in the audience,
like me,
a no-hitter is where every ball you throw is not hit. Just like that.
Makes sense.
The entire game. And for context, since the beginning of Major League Baseball, there has been roughly 210,000 games played. A little bit more than that now. There's only been roughly 303 no-hitters out of the 210,000 games played. For your context, that is a 0.0014% of all of the games played.
Yeah, times that by. Hang on, we're doing math here, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a 14% chance.
There you go. No, 0.14.
Math in a podcast.
There you go. Quick math right there.
0.14% of every MLB game has been a no-hitter.
Has contained a no-hitter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doc Ellis, for the Pittsburgh Pirates, did such feat on LSD. It is reported saying...
He is reported saying...
Yeah. Doc Ellis has reportedly said that he thought he was pitching the baseball to rock and roll legend Jimi Hendrix, who to him was holding a guitar as his baseball bat.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's even reported saying that during the fourth inning, that Richard Nixon was the home plate umpire. Like, he was tripping hard, bro.
Yeah.
Nixon was the umpire. He was pitching to Jimi Hendrix.
He was really, really seeing shit.
He was gone.
Yeah.
And it's just like, to me, this is hilarious, right? Like, I don't do drugs or plant medicine, anything like that. I'm not part of this, movement. But
I do think drug stories are hilarious, though.
But yes, listening to this stuff is like, what the heck? I mean, Nixon at home plate is kind of wild to me.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But the main point of this whole thing is, like, when Aaron Rodgers came out and talked about this, it erased a negative stereotype. Well, I wouldn't say erased.
Stigma.
It helped
destigmatized.
Yes, it helped destigmatize the negative connotation attached to the word psychedelics. Back in the 60s and 70s, everyone was starting to do them. And it became something that...
We can go into all that history, culture, counterculture.
Exactly. It was a big countercultural movement. And it was... From then, it just created this negative stereotype in the minds of people across across the United States and just the world, really.
I mean, and that stayed fairly stagnant pretty much up until around 2020.
Exactly.
I also think that, everyone kind of being home, bar Florida, everyone being at home, and stuff like that, sort of allowed it to happen. People started, thinking a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Routines change, your perspective changes. You're when you're stuck at home all day. I mean, everybody knows what happened during COVID,
exactly.
But,
yeah.
I think that it was just sort of this perfect storm that allowed this
negative stigma to be brought to the forefront and
to be at least considered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for Aaron to do this, to express and show that his, interest in the psychedelic plant medicine sphere, it really opened up everyone's eyes to change and, just you don't even have to agree, but to accept that there's difference of opinions and that everybody, athletes, celebrities, or regular Joes like you and me, they have to go through life and find out who they really are. And I don't think people should have any ill will towards somebody for trying to find who they really are. There shouldn't be like people from one half of the world or one half of the spectrum saying, "Oh, well, you're doing this. This is wrong." But is it really? We're all on this floating rock in space together, right? I don't think we should be wasting our time, really knocking others for finding who they really are. And I really think that Aaron helped knock down that barrier and helped other people around the United States and across the planet really open up and go deep into finding who they really are, because that's what's important during life, to find out who you are and to love others.
Yeah.
And I think Aaron really helped break down that barrier.
Now, I will say, we're not trying to influence your morality. You are allowed to have whatever type of opinion you want to have on the subject. It is illegal in the United States. It's not in Peru. If you go to Peru and you do it and you come back,
you're fine.
You are not breaking the law. I mean, you may be breaking some law somewhere that says you can't go to another place to do something. I don't think there's anything like that.
That's true.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, what happened with Rogers and what happened with Stills and
Doc Ellis
is, in my opinion, it's a positive thing. And allowing people to explore these positives is probably a good thing.
Yeah. I think that it is important for everybody, no matter what the way is you find, to find out who you are truly. Yeah. And I think that we as a society need to appreciate everybody regardless of the path they take to get to that point. I think that everyone should appreciate that people are trying to better themselves and to find out who they truly are. Yep. Personally.
Whatever path that takes them down.
Exactly. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, listening to our pilot episode of the Athletes Do What podcast.
Athletes Do What?
What? If you guys want to tune in next week to hear about our, if you guys want to tune in next week, I just want to thank everyone for listening to our pilot episode of the Athletes Do What podcast. Tune in next week if you are inclined to hear how a retired linebacker who played for both the New York Giants and Green Bay Packers put his playing career on the side, said, "I'm done," to go collect cards for a living.
Pokemon cards, specifically professional
Pokemon card collector. Till then, guys, I'm Nick.
And it's Ethan.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.
What a banger.